Hi everyone. In today's class, we're going to learn how to determine inheritance patterns by looking at pedigrees. You will actually need a copy of these pedigree patterns, which I have handed out in class, but I've also attached a digital copy of it, so if you don't have it on you, you can download it and print it out, and then you can follow along with us. So my intention for today is to basically go through the steps in terms of how you actually get to analyze these pedigrees. So let's go through the steps first, okay, and then afterwards I'll go through each pedigree one by one so that you can follow along. So in terms of how to determine dominant or recessive inheritance patterns, there's basically 3 to 4 steps to this. Okay. The first thing you want to do is look at a pedigree and determine the number of individuals that are affected in every generation. Okay. Meaning, how many of the individuals carry the gene that you're trying to track down. Okay. How many of them are shaded in. So we look at it for every row, which represents every generation. So here is a possibility, okay? It's possible that if there's at least one individual in every generation, okay, then you are likely following a dominant trait. The alternative to that is if you notice that there's one generation that everyone is normal, that has not been affected, that means the gene has skipped that generation. So if you see that happening, then you're likely to have a recessive trait. Okay? We say likely because nothing happens exactly the way that we predict. Okay? There's always a possibility that something improbable happens. Okay? So the guidelines that we're giving you today is merely just guidelines. They're not hard set rules. Okay? So step 1, figure out how many individuals are affected in every generation. If there is at least one individual in every generation, you're likely following a dominant trait. If you see evidence of a trait skipping a generation, then that is more likely to be a recessive trait. Step 2, determine if the affected individual are of a specific gender. Okay. So, look at all the people that are shaded in. Are all of them males? Or most of them males? Or most of them females? Okay. That's what we want you to try and look at. Because if you have a 50-50 split, okay, between males and females who are affected, then it's likely that you're following an autosomal trait, okay, which means that the gene itself is on an autosome, okay, either chromosome number 1 all the way to 22. It is not sex-linked. The other possibility is if the majority of the affected are males, then that gives us more reason to believe that it is sex-linked, okay, and that it is possibly a recessive gene found on the X chromosome. If the number of affected individuals, there are more females. Now, in this case, we're going to say that it could be sex-linked, and it's very possible that it's a dominant gene on an X chromosome. Okay. There doesn't need to be many more females than males, okay, because it's just a slight increase. Okay, but usually if you count more females than males, you might be leaning towards sex-linked dominant. And again, like I said before, these are just guidelines. Okay? They're not set in stone, but if you see enough of these patterns, you'll kind of recognize them in the future and you'll be more confident in your ability to determine whether they're autosomal or sex-linked. Step 3. Test your assumptions by finding the genotypes of every individual on the pedigree. So this one here, it just means that once you've determined what type of inheritance pattern it might be, you're going to have to see if it's true or not. So what you're going to really need to do is go through every single one of your pedigrees, every single individual, and find the genotypes. But you have to be careful, okay? And what you need to be careful of is how you represent the genes. So if you have an autosomal pattern, okay, doesn't matter whether it's recessive or dominant, you're just going to use the standard genotypes that we've always used. Okay, we just use the letters. For example, big A for dominant, small a for recessive. However, if you have predicted a sex-linked inheritance pattern, okay, using just the letters, okay, the capital and lowercase letters, isn't enough. Okay. You also have to somehow include gender because it's sex-linked. So the only way to do that is to actually use the sex chromosomes and your uppercase and lowercase letters to represent genes. So in this example here, it's X big A, X small a. So in the next couple of videos, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of the pedigrees because they represent each type of inheritance pattern, and I'll show you the thinking process in terms of how we test our assumptions.